Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen.
Please introduce your host, Matthew Lloyd. Hello and welcome to the very first show, Is There Anybody Out There? I'm your host, Matthew Lloyd, and thank you for joining us for the show. Now, I realise I don't have the face or the voice for video shows, but until we can get ourselves a new trainee resident DJ who will also act as a presenter for our shows, you're stuck with me. So, on with the show. Now, hopefully, you've seen the trailer for this show, which was brought out last year, but if you haven't, never fear. You can check out our trailer on our social media sites, including our YouTube channel at Club Map Productions, or on our website www.clubmapproductions.co.uk. Now, if you haven't seen the trailer, then just to explain, normally I'll be using a teleprompter. I do write the scripts myself, but I have severe memory problems due to prolonged sleep deprivation over many years. So I will have a teleprompter so I don't miss bits out and I don't forget anything. Unfortunately, we've had a slight technical issue with our external hard drive and it's wiped the script for this show. So we haven't been able to cut and paste it onto the teleprompter. So I'm using the old-fashioned script method, so bear with me. Also, we normally have guests on the show, volunteers from the paranormal investigation team, who would help me with the sound effects. Unfortunately, I'm on my own for this show today, so unfortunately, you'll have to bear with me as I manage everything myself. So, what have we got coming up on the show? We'll have the parapsychology lesson of the show, covering a brief introduction into parapsychology and also ghosts and hauntings. We'll also cover this month's paranormal investigation, which was initially carried out in conjunction with Extours, who can be found at extours.co.uk. Details of their website will be on the script, which you can find at our website, which I've mentioned, www.clubmapproductions.co.uk. They're a very good organisation. They do a lot of paranormal investigations and it's all very well organised and very professional, so it's worth having a look at their site. So anyway, see how we got on in the investigation later in the show. And if you're wondering where we did go for the first paranormal investigation, we went to Dead Woman's Ditch on the Quantocks in Somerset, which was really nice, and we had a great time. So see how things went later in the show. But for now, the parapsychology lesson of the show, a brief introduction to parapsychology, ghosts and hauntings. So, some basic information on parapsychology. The study of the paranormal is known as parapsychology and is the scientific study of anything that is not considered normal or defies explanation. So, in other words, parapsychology is the study of paranormal psychological phenomena, such as telepathy, clairvoyance, and psychokinesis. It also includes a study of other paranormal claims, such as near-death experiences, apparitions, and synchronicity. That's a favourite of mine. Parapsychology is also known as psychical research. The word parapsychology was first used in 1925. There are many other forms of parapsychology phenomena, including ghosts, hauntings, poltergeists, UFOs, witches and fairies, time slips, vampires, legends, monsters, otherwise known as cryptozoology. The list is practically never ending. We'll look at all of these throughout the series. Basically, the paranormal can be described as anything that defies normal explanation. So, for this month's subject, we'll look at ghosts and hauntings. As Albert Einstein said, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. This is his statement from the first law of thermodynamics and basically means that the total amount of energy in a system remains the same unless energy is added from outside the system. The human body contains energy and is both a consumer and producer of energy. The human body also contains electrical energy through electrical impulses, electrical generation, electrical signals, and charged elements. The chemical potential energy stored in a dead body eventually will be decomposed by bacterial activity, thus recycling energy into the environment as heat and other potential forms of energy. However, recently an interesting study was conducted where terminally ill patients who were staying in hospital were signed up and, near the point of death, were transferred to a bed attached to a large scale. It was noted that every occasion at the point of death, a substantial loss in weight was recorded. Now, initial thoughts that were some of this energy or electrical energy leaving the body formed what we call the soul. Unfortunately, the study neglected to account for the loss of weight through the loss of bodily fluids at the point of death. So, until a second study is carried out with adjustments made for the loss of bodily fluids at the point of death, the study is inconclusive. Okay, what is parapsychology? Parapsychology involves a study of a variety of proposed psychic phenomena by scientists and scholars, including the search for evidence of their existence. Parapsychologists study a wide range of paranormal experiences, so let's look at some of the terminology and phenomena. Extrasensory perception, otherwise known as ESP. Work on ESP involves three topics: telepathy, which looks at the transfer of information between individuals by means other than the known senses. An example of this is that Simon is involved in a plane crash and thinks about Emma. At the same time, Emma hears an internal voice telling her that Simon has been involved in a plane crash. Precognition, which looks at the perception of information about future events, also referred to as future sight, second sight, and prophecy. For example, Billy dreams that Karen will have an accident on a bicycle, and a short while later, Karen falls off a bicycle and hurts herself. Clairvoyance, which is the obtaining of information about a place or event by unknown means. Parapsychologists sometimes use the term remote viewing to refer to instances of clairvoyance in which information is acquired from a geographical location. Now, interestingly, during the Cold War, Russia, the USA, and UK intelligence and military organisations experimented with remote viewing for the purposes of spying. Okay, so now we've got psychokinesis, otherwise referred to as PK. This is the influence of the mind on an object, physical system, or biological system without physical interaction, which is abbreviated to PK, and has the three following topics. Macro PK, which is a large scale movement of physical objects with the mind, sometimes referred to as telekinesis. An example of this would be someone holding a spoon in their hand and bending it without physical force being exerted. Micro PK, which is the mental influence over small scale physical systems such as dice and electronic number generators, and is only detectable through using statistics. An example of this would be a person who consistently beats the odds when playing casino games with dice. Finally, bio-PK, which involves a mental influence over biological systems, including plants, insects, and animals, and in vitro samples and humans. This area of research includes remote staring detection and distance healing. A classic example of this is someone sitting at a table in a cafe when the hairs tingle on the back of their neck and they feel that they are being watched, only to turn round and see someone at another table staring at them. So, what is PSI? Often it is difficult in practice to distinguish between the areas we've just discussed regarding ESP and PK. Therefore, parapsychologists often use a neutral umbrella term, PSI, to denote the unknown factor underlying both ESP and PK. PSI is a general term used in parapsychology for the phenomena studied by the field, including cognitive ones such as mind-to-mind communication, as well as physical ones such as the movement of an object with one's own mind. When did parapsychology begin? Parapsychological ideas have deep historical roots. However, The founder of parapsychology as a scientific pursuit has been attributed to Joseph Banks Rhine, who, in the 1930s, along with his colleagues at Duke University, carried out studies of extrasensory perception using means such as dice rolling and card guessing games to seek evidence. What are paranormal phenomena? Paranormal phenomena include events that cannot be explained according to current scientific understanding of the world. Such events seem to defy, for example, established facts about the workings of perception and physical motion. So, what is a ghost? A ghost is described as being a manifestation of a person or animal who has died, and occasionally a vehicle or mode of transport. Ghost, soul, or spectre of the dead person, usually believed to inhabit the netherworld and to be capable of returning in some form to the world of the living. According to some descriptions provided by witnesses and believers, a ghost may appear as a living being or as a nebulous likeness of the deceased, or, occasionally, in other forms. Belief in ghosts is based on the ancient notion that the human spirit is separable from the body and may maintain its existence after the body's death. In many societies, funeral rituals are believed to prevent the ghost from haunting the living. In China, ghosts are widely believed to exist. The Chinese have a strong belief that the soul is composed of three parts, named the superior, the inferior, and finally the ghost spirit, which will reside within the ancestral altar normally found within the home. The other two parts of the soul are free to go where they will, and according to Chinese mythology and folklore, a deceased person can be seen in different places at the same time. In Eastern European with the Baltic states, there is still a great deal of superstition and fear of ghosts. A common thought is that ghosts cannot cross running water. However, frequently hauntings take place by rivers, streams, and where underground streams exist. A haunting, however, consists of a multitude of events. Usually, it is home or workplace that has repeated events of unexplainable nature. There are many theories of how regular or yearly hauntings appear, and one of them is the stone theory or residual haunting. Much in the same way that we can record on DVDs and CDs, the stones of buildings or the very atmosphere of an area have been imprinted with events and actions of the past. Now, it's suggested that some hauntings are caused by the release of historical information from rocks, brick, and other materials. This theory originated from 1972 in the British television play The Stone Tape, which is about a team of scientists that investigated an alleged haunted Victorian mansion. There is normally no interaction between the apparitions and the person or persons who can see them, and it is the same as watching a film play out in front of you. Most psychic investigators believe that what is seen is just a playback of events when the conditions are right. It is thought by many that buildings and places will carry the memories of events, particularly when they have been traumatic. Then there are deathbed apparitions, who are normally seen by the person who is seriously ill or injured prior to their death. Occasionally, those who are nursing or caring for or visiting that person may also see a glimpse of long dead relatives or friends who have come to guide the dying person. There are many theories and many types of ghosts. Most parapsychologists prefer us to use the term apparitions rather than ghosts. There seems to be a link between electricity and haunting, and it is not unusual for a building that is said to be haunted to have a large electricity bill. Throughout history, there has been a mention of spirit and ghosts. The Bible gives an example of the ghost of Samuel, who is questioned by Saul as to what would happen in the future. Samuel was called from his eternal rest by a wise woman who had the skills to call upon those who had died. Today, that would be called the art of necromancy. Samuel answered the questions Saul asked of him and was distressed to hear the answers, which pointed to Saul's downfall and the death of his sons, all of which came to pass. There are many different types of ghosts. Poltergeists have been termed as mischievous or malevolent spirits who frequently feed from the energy of young people as they enter puberty. There have been many theories. The ancient civilizations believed poltergeist activity was caused by demons and devils. The word poltergeist is believed to have originated in Germany and translates as to knock or the rumbling spirit. During the 1970s, A.D. Cornell and Alan Gould examined 500 poltergeist cases and put all the data collected into a computer to analyse and find any similarities in the 500 cases. The cases of poltergeist activity had been collated and documented cases during the 1800s onwards. They discovered that 24% of cases lasted over a 12-month period. 64% involved the movement of small objects. 12% included the opening and shutting of windows and doors. 58% of poltergeist activity was at night. 36% involved the movement of larger pieces of furniture. 16% of persons involved had conversation communication between themselves and the entity. And 48% involved knocking and rapping on walls, doors, furniture, ceilings, and roofs. Now, poltergeist activity takes place when a certain individual is in the area, normally the home, and normally will last anything from a few weeks or months, but will rarely continue for longer than a year. Common poltergeist activity involves loud noises, rapping, tapping, smells which are usually obnoxious, unknown lights, electrical malfunctions, bells and telephones ringing, writing on the walls, doors opening and closing, shattering of objects and windows. Many people believe that poltergeists are a form of spontaneous psychokinesis. One of the most reported types of ghosts is that of the phantom hitchhiker. There have been hundreds of reports of car drivers picking up a lovely blonde woman wearing a white ball gown in Chicago, USA. If motorists fail to stop, she has been known to jump upon the bonnet of the car before disappearing. In England, one of the most notorious ghostly hitchhikers is a young woman who for nearly 40 years has been seen regularly hitching a ride from the top of Bluebell Hill, Maidstone, Kent. She always insists on sitting in the rear seat of the car and will give a destination. When the driver arrives at the given address, they turn and find the passenger is gone. No one knows who she is. Another type of apparition is an apparition of, well, a crisis apparition, basically. This is when an apparition appears at a time of crisis, normally when a person has died. The person seeing the apparition is normally a close friend or relative. Crisis apparitions are not confined to those who are dying or on the brink of death, but can also apply to the living. This usually happens during a time of crisis. What appears to happen is that the person who is in crisis somehow manages to project an image to another person, even if they're not aware of doing so. Just as unseen radio waves travel through the air, is it not possible for the brain to act in the same capacity as being a receiver and a sender? Apparitions are not confined just to land. The Flying Dutchman is said to have sunk during a storm in 1641, with the loss of all lives in the vicinity of the Cape of Good Hope. As the ship floundered, it is said the captain decreed he would sail round the Cape even if it took him to doomsday. The Flying Dutchman has been sighted on countless occasions and is said to be a sign of ill luck. So, what are orbs? Interesting. Orbs have become very popular in the world of the paranormal, with the achievement of and the advancement of photography and filming. They've been seen more and more. Frequently, they are just dust particles with light reflecting from the particle itself. But there are other orbs that appear to respond to commands from those who are viewing them. Photographic orbs are often explained as being the results of flash or ambient light that reflects off a variety of things, including small water droplets, minuscule insects, moths, and dust particles. Then there are orbs that appear on film and in photographs and appear to contain faces or unexplainable symbols. Many people believe these orbs are the energy of the deceased and that the spirit is composed of an energy which is manifested into orbs. They are also seen in areas prior to manifestations of apparitions. Then, of course, there are banshees. The word banshee originates in Celtic traditions of Ireland and Scotland and translates as woman of peace. It is said that in Ireland, when a person died, a woman or women would stand outside the house of the deceased and sing. The Banshee legend appears to have stemmed from these singers, but with the Banshee appearing prior to her death and waiting outside the house. Psychokinesis originates from the Greek word psyche, and translates into breath or soul. Kinesis translates as motion or movement, so psychokinesis is the alleged ability to move objects or change their shape through the power of thought without using physical means. Necromancy originates from the Greek translating as dead divination. This refers to the awakening of the dead and the spirits of the dead for reasons of magic, used by warlocks, wizards, witches, and magicians. Examples of this practice have or are taken from Haiti, where the corpses of the dead are brought back from the dead by a high priest or magician who calls upon Baron Samedi, the protector of the graves and the dead. Okay, ectoplasm. Ectoplasm originates from the Greek ektos, which means outside, and plasma, which translates to something moulded or formed. Ectoplasm has been described as being a thick vapour that can be emitted from any orifice of a trance medium's body. It is also seen as a haze or wispy smoke that appears prior to the manifestation of a figure ghost apparition, or as a residual of a spiritual activity. There is a belief among many parapsychologists that ectoplasm is also a main factor of psychokinesis. And that brings us to the end of the show's parapsychology lesson of the month. Next show, we'll be looking at mediums, clairvoyants, and psychics. And now it's time in the show where we cover this month's paranormal investigation. Okay, so this month's Power Investigation team consisted of myself and two volunteers who are production team members, Mike Winter and his mum, Cherie Winter. Unfortunately, they can't be with us on the show today, so I'll have to just explain what happened and talk you through it. Normally, we'd have a conversation with the people who were taken place on the investigation so we could all discuss what we all saw. The next investigation, by the way, for the next show on the 1st of each month, we have got some extra volunteers coming along, so we should have some guests on that show. So, I'll give you a bit of background to the paranormal investigation, and then I'll discuss what happened and what we experienced during the evening. We got to Dead Woman's Ditch over Stowey on the Quantox for about 8:45 p.m. The event organisers from X-Doors were already there in the car park from an earlier paranormal investigation that took place prior to ours. They were very friendly and made themselves known to us. The group was of about 11 of us, plus one of the organisers. At 9 p.m. on time, the event started. We were led into the woods to a small clearing with a table with some equipment on it. There were a number of K2 meters, a number of dowsing rods, a set of wireless headphones, and some torches. For those of you who are not familiar with paranormal investigation equipment, I'll cover these briefly in a little while for you. Okay. So the host went through the background of Dead Woman's Ditch with us, covering it comprehensively as we were walking into the woods. According to the host and records, Dead Woman's Ditch is sometimes associated with the murder of Jane Watford by her husband John back in 1789. But the name actually predates the murder, appearing on an earlier map. In 1988, the body of Shirley Banks was found 1 mile from the site, and John Cannon was found guilty of a murder and is still in prison now. So, back at the table, and the K2 meters and the dowsing rods were handed out to those members who wanted them, whilst members of the group took it in turns to wear the headphones that were connected by Bluetooth to the host's phone and the Necrophonic app, which, again, I'll explain this a bit later in the show. Okay, so the equipment I've mentioned so far, let's start with the K2 meters. These are very similar to EMF meters, which are electromagnetic field meters. EMF meters can measure AC electromagnetic fields, which are usually emitted from man-made sources such as electrical wiring and electrical equipment. As humans, we ourselves generate an EMF field through the heart and cortical tissue. The theory is that when apparitions appear, they interact with the environment through electromagnetic fields. So any alleged paranormal activity should be detected using an EMF meter. The more the activity, the higher the number on the EMF meter. A K2 meter is similar to an EMF meter in that it detects the same activity. However, a K2 meter has a colour spectrum for the readings as opposed to numbers on the display. This is to make it easier to detect how strong or how above normal the EMF meter reading is. This simple handheld device is a standard paranormal investigation tool and is usually the first piece of investigation equipment an investigator will purchase. And this was the case for myself as well. The purpose of any electromagnetic field meter is to locate sources of electromagnetic radiation such as magnetic, electrical and/or RF microwave and provide a reading of relative strength and direction of the EM field. The thought in using this meter is to find indications of paranormal activity. Investigations will look for sudden erratic readings or spikes from this device. The investigations can see this by the lights on the meter going from green up through ambers to reds. An electromagnetic field is a physical field produced by electrically charged objects. It affects the behaviour of charged objects in the vicinity of the field. The electromagnetic field extends indefinitely throughout space and describes the electromagnetic interaction. Dowsing rods and paranormal investigators. Dowsing has been used for many centuries by many different cultures. The L-shaped rod, which is the type of dowsing rods we were provided with on the X-Doors investigation, is probably the most ancient of all dowsing instruments. The word dowsing means to use a rod or pendulum to find something. Both animate and inanimate objects have energy fields. Everything that exists in the universe is ultimately pure energy that gives off a vibrational frequency. That would include every particle, thought, emotion, word, object, and experience. When you dowse for a target, you tune into its frequency. The response from the rod means that you are reflecting energy back to yourself for interpretation. Finally, the Necrophonic app on the smartphone for the wireless headphones. This is just simply a version of a spirit box. A spirit box is usually a handheld device used by paranormal investigators to communicate with the spirits or entities from the afterlife. They operate by scanning through radio frequencies in real time, creating a stream of white noise and audio fragments, with the idea that entities can manipulate these frequencies to generate coherent responses to questions posed by the investigator. So, back to the hour-and-a-half event with X-Tours. Once all the equipment had been handed out, the host started to talk to Spirit, calling out questions and trying to get the K2 meters and dowsing rods to respond. Several of the group members took turns in wearing the headphones and relaying the responses they heard, including one of our team members, Cherie, who was going to tell us a bit more about her experience but can't make the show today, unfortunately. Some of these responses seemed relevant and made sense, whilst others didn't. Some of the group members' dowsing rods also moved in response to some of the questions posed by our host. This continued as we set off deeper into the woods and down towards Dead Woman's Ditch. Along the way, several of the group members' dowsing rods moved. However, mine remained still the whole evening, and I had no movement of them in response to any of the questions called out by our host. After the hour-and-a-half event with the group members, we all returned to the table in the small clearing, handed back all the equipment, and once the host had packed it all away, we made our way back to the car park for 10:30 p.m. Then, myself and our team took a half-hour break whilst everyone else left. We had some refreshments, and I started to get my own paranormal investigation kit ready for our own investigation. I decided that we would take with us 2 dictaphones for something known as electronic voice phenomenon, also known as EVP, a K2 meter, an EMF meter, a night vision head video camera, a night vision video camera, and torches. We left the dowsing rods, dowsing pendant, and multi-spectrum video camera as we were limited for space on the walk. For those of you who don't know, electronic voice phenomenon, or EVP, is a term for sounds on electronic recordings such as digital dictaphones, of which we have 2, that are interpreted as spirit voices. It's a controversial topic in the fields of ghost hunting and parapsychology. Unfortunately, despite checking all the equipment before leaving for the investigation, we seem to experience some strange technical faults and a few technical issues. The first was noticeable with the night vision video camera. This camera was fitted with a 4GB SD memory card, so it should have had more than enough memory storage on it. However, this didn't seem to be the case. Mike, one of our production teams, volunteered to be the cameraman and operate the night vision video camera for us. Although I've read the instructions for it, it's still a very new piece of kit and I'm still getting the hang of it. However, on 3 separate occasions, Mike reports a message flashing up on the screen about the memory card being full and having to make more space. So each time I'd delete the video and we'd try recording again. It seemed to happen every 27 seconds. However, after the investigation, and when I returned home to the office to check through the footage, I looked through the video camera myself and it had the 3 recording attempts on it despite saying that it was full. Although we didn't pick anything up on the recordings, unfortunately. Now, regarding the 2 dictaphones, I recorded 2 files with them over our own paranormal investigation, so there should have been 2 audio files on each dictaphone. Unfortunately, the first dictaphone I checked mysteriously had no audio files on it, and the second dictaphone I checked had only 27 minutes audio file on it, covering the start of our own paranormal investigation. I listened through this audio file, but didn't hear anything other than our own voices talking and asking questions. Sometimes you will hear other noises and other voices and answers in response to the questions you ask, but you don't hear it in real time. You have to go back afterwards and listen to the recording. So anyway, we was walking back from Dead Woman's Ditch, a group. There was 3 of us, myself, Mike Winter, Cherie Winter. I was at the back on the left. Mike Winter was in front of me to the right, and his mother, Cherie Winter, was further on in front. As we was walking back, suddenly I felt a tap on my left shoulder. Turned round, no one there. I asked, clearly it wasn't Mike and Cherie. There wasn't any other branches overhanging that could have touched me. I had a good look around with the torch. We asked if there was anyone there with us. We did call out. We didn't get any responses. So I'm not sure what that was, really. Still remain uncertain at the moment. So there you go. Now, for the next show we'll do, the shows go out on the 1st of each month. So this is the first one, 1st of March. This should be going out hopefully on our website and on our YouTube channel. For our next show, we'll be doing a paranormal investigation up Glastonbury tour. So please come back and join us on the 1st of April for episode 2 of Is There Anybody Out There? And that's it for the show. Thank you very much.